Racism affects our bodies, our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. But through it all, we remain, we heal, we rise. Our bodies carry the weight of racism, the exclusion, the injustice, the exhaustion of proving we belong. But we also carry resilience, strength, healing. It wounds the heart too, through words unspoken, doors unopened. But within our communities, there is medicine, love, culture, the truth that we are enough. Racism is a battle of the mind, trying to define our worth. But we know the truth. We are powerful, intelligent, unstoppable. Our minds are sacred, our wisdom limitless, and our spirits unbreakable. No matter how racism tries to erase us, we remain rooted in ceremony, land, and each other. This land holds many stories. Healing is not just about one community. It is about us all. We stand, we heal, we rise together.
Liganda de Hiawan, Kawituko Visigol Tikason, my ceremonial in this fine day. I've had so many recognitions from the society per se, including like today a school being named after me. In 2019, getting an honorary degree, Doctor of Law from the University of Alberta. When I first came into the city in 1967-68, right from Gore, being pressed from residential school. Even when they mentioned my name at the school, my Christian name, Francis Whiskajack, and they called us out an assembly, everybody laughed. Why? Because of that Whiskey Jack. At that time, I felt so ashamed, and I felt like crawling under the table and hiding my face. Because first of all, I'm a minority. It really affected me emotionally until one teacher stood up and said, "Come on, people, you cannot condemn a man by his name." And I stood up. And in my mind, I thought, somebody cares. And then I thought, I looked at all these faces that were laughing at me, and I thought, I'm going to be just as good, if not better than you are. That was the warrior, internal warrior spirit that I had, I'm not going to let these people bring me down. That's where the journey began, to where I can do it. To pick yourself up and think positive, that was really amazing. And so in between that time, I've heard a lot of names like Wagon Burley, Whiskey Bottle, Applejack, all those Whiskey Bottle, like all those degrading names. I wanted to really swing at these people, but the old people had said, when you respond in violence, it brings nothing but violence back to you. So rise above it. Be gracious. And that required extreme discipline, and nurse those hurts of what people said. It hurt. The feelings hurt. And so a lot of things has to start with self. Honoring yourself, respecting yourself, trusting yourself. Because if you don't start with these, if you don't love yourself, how can you love anybody else? If you don't trust yourself, how can you trust anybody else? So all those have to be earned through some of the ceremonies that I've been involved in. The ceremony for us Native people is our true culture. The songs, the sweat laughs, the sun dances. And I live my life like that because it has to do with honoring your own spirit, first of all. Find yourselves deep in within. So the other message that I will give you from my own mentor elder is, if you're weak in this life, you will never survive. But if you are strong, you will survive. To be strong in a positive way, in a good way. To be strong in spirit. Have a strong mind.
Otania, my name is Quinn Buck, and my position is the program coordinator for the Uskayak and Otena Hiochik program. I want to be able to build a pathway for youth to go home, and not in a way that keeps them on the res, but in a way that allows them to see themselves as global citizens and allows them to see themselves as part of a larger fabric of peoples. Our life is vibrant, and I want people just to experience that and know that that is what it's supposed to be. I think as an Indigenous person, I experience racism on the daily, unfortunately. I lost 2 of my uncles. One of them I damn near lost to the streets, and one of them I did. One of them, it was too late. They found him on a blanket on the streets. I was mad as hell. I was mad at my family because I just couldn't help but wonder, like, this is what privilege sometimes does to us. When we get too good, when we get too big, we start looking at family members we used to sit next to and say, you can't come with me on my journey because there's rooms you're not welcome in. Which is a stupid, chaotic idea. And I thought about my cousins who lost their dad that day, and how they're the ones who are going to have to deal with the trauma. His grandchildren are still wondering and missing their Muslim. And how do you talk to them about how he was there because of societal circumstances and not because of his own accord? Who wants to be on the streets like that? No one does, least of all him. And I think about the man who held me as a kid, that man that he was. And I think about my other uncle who damn near suffered the same fate, except I had to step in. And I stepped in because I was scared of losing another person like that. We shouldn't live with fear like that. No one should. But we do, because of the stupid way our society is set up in the way that it's just meant to exploit and destroy Black and brown bodies. I lost my uncle not to the streets but to skin cancer, and I want to make that difference because my cousin called me, and when she called me, she told me I don't know what else to do. I don't talk to my family the way that you do, but I need my family here. And all I could think to myself was, that's privilege again, separating us. You went to school, you got a degree, and all of a sudden you turned your back on your family. I was like, but that doesn't speak to the healing that you think that you did, or I think that I did. And so in that instance, my uncle was facing backlash from the nurses at the hospital. And again, I had to put myself in front of them, and say, like, this is an Indigenous man in front of you. No, we're no less worthy of dignity and respect. One of the last conversations me and my uncle had face to face was him thinking. And that's all I really want for my community, is to know that nobody goes alone. But it's so hard when you don't know what people are going through, It's so hard when you don't know how some days to make it through the stuff you're going through. I am just as sick and tired as any other Indigenous person out here of losing people, unfairly, unjustly, cruelly, in some instances, just feeling unsafe, for no reason in particular other than just the world we're born into. My heart just breaks for all the youth out there who don't have the language yet. Not just their Indigenous language, but language around anti-racism and how to protect themselves. But sometimes people just need love, especially in the face of racism. They just need to feel care. And so at a micro level and a macro level in my workspace, I definitely try to lead with love and bring love to all these spaces, because love is listening.
Hi, my name is Blake Desjardins. I'm the very proud member of Parliament for Edmonton-Griesbach, and I'm the second Indigenous member of Parliament elected in the province of Alberta, and I'm the national critic for Indigenous housing, international trade, youth, and the deputy critic for 2S LGBTQ issues and immigration, refugees, and Canadian citizenship. Why does racism exist? It's a tool for someone. It's a tool of something. And it's a tool largely for probably the greatest evil we've probably seen on the face of the earth, which is this deep desire of imperialism, this deep desire of the very few to control power over the very many, and to take from this planet everything that's given us. That is a backwards way of looking at the world, it's a backwards way of looking at our future. But it's all for the very narrow promise of profit. Today, maybe 200 years ago, it was the glory of the crown. The king wanted everything. But today, it's the glory of the dollar. That's what's pushing racism. That's what's investing in racism. That's what's making it possible. That's what's making it a reality. Because there's interest. People have interests in that. Once you have racism perpetuated in your society, you can easily divide them. Let's say you have 10 poor people and one rich person. These 10 poor people say to this one rich person, you pay me more because we're doing all your farming for you. You're sitting at home, you're eating our bread, you're doing nothing, and we work every single day, these 10 people. This person then says, well, hey, listen, some of you are women and some of you are men. The women, they're not working as hard as the men. So is it me you have a problem with, or is it the women? So then you know the men are saying, well, it's the women, they're working less than us, they're carrying less than us. It has to be their fault we're not getting paid more. So let's take the wages away from them and give them to us. Racism works the same way, just like sexism. They say, it's the browns, they're not pulling up their weight, they're not as smart as you, they're not as strong as you, because you're European, you're white, you're stronger than them. Those myths are to protect this person, not to protect those who are instigating the violence, or not to protect those who are the victims, but so that we don't even talk about the guy behind the curtain, eating caviar, happy to see the people he owns fight amongst each other, and he'll never be stopped. And I think that's, when we're talking about combating racism, one of the most important pieces to that. It's knowing that we're all victims of it. White people are victims of racism, just as much as anybody else, because it makes them the perpetrator of violence. And if you don't want to be a perpetrator of violence, which nobody does, it means that they also require healing. They've lost a piece of themselves. And imagine being a grandmother all those years ago in Ireland when your children left and fled to Canada, how much they lost in that movement, how much stories, language, culture that they lost, and that grandmother suffers as much as our cookums that lost their children going to residential schools when they lost their children fleeing violence in Ireland. And so the question of racism is a really complicated one, and I think the easy part to it though is knowing that it's a tool, an advantage for the very few. And there's a reason why it exists. It's for that very few to benefit. And I think that is something we have to all overcome. And how we do it is by, I think, practicing our values. Our elders, our teachers, they've told us these things time and time again, these teachings that are passed on from generation to generation to generation. They sound cliche, sure, love, courage, strength, hope. They sound like cliches, but when we really hold those values, when we practice those values, things change. That's how we see elders who have seen some of the worst atrocities placed upon them. Murray Sinclair, I think of. The late Murray Sinclair, one of the greatest champions of racism ever in our country's history. He gets to hold his head held high because he was able to show not just us, but every single Indigenous person who came after him, that it's not only possible to hold your head held high, it's not only possible to have dignity in the way you speak and the way you act, but it's also possible to teach those who've harmed you what pains they have caused and how they can be better. That's immense courage. That's breaking a cycle. That would ensure that no one is ever subject to this disgusting regime of someone being better than somebody else simply because of their skin color, stemming all the way back from the very onset of colonization. Racism was a tool to take land, to create empire, to create honor for the crown. Today, that very same tool is being used for the very narrow profits of billionaires who would rather have a population divided so that they can keep their wages low. And so it just keeps morphing to the next bad guy. And so it's a pretty big task, but I think one that we're going to have to overcome with our values. It's the only way to break that cycle. And I think that lesson is one that I have to learn, one that we all have to learn, one we have to practice, and that's probably the hardest part. And that's, I think, the call to action from our elders. That's what they're asking me, that's what they're asking all of us to do. Is find ways to overcome that, which is one of the hardest things to do. And I know it's cliche to tell young people that it's going to get easier, it's going to get better, but it really will, and it does get better. The first time I probably experienced racism was when I left my community. When I left the Fishing Lake Métis settlement with all the other Native kids in my school, they were your cousins. You know, you knew their parents. You had a community. You went to the same things as them. You spoke the same language as these people. You had the same values. You had the same jokes. The same places you'd go fishing. To be removed from that community for the purpose of going to another school, another rural school in a predominantly white town. And that was a culture shock. And I think it's a culture shock for a lot of young people who are leaving communities still today. It's a big culture shock to go to a community, predominantly white community, and try to fit in. You find that you fights right away. Gym class, fights, because you didn't want to be on the same team as somebody who was brown. Lunchtime, it's only the brown people. You're gonna go outside and you gotta learn to smoke cigarettes because you're gonna have no friends. That's how it goes. That's just how every school I see with Indigenous children going to predominantly white schools, that segregation exists. You can go to any school across Canada today where that happens and you'll see that obvious racial segregation still today. So it is hard for young people, I think, to have hope when so often they're told, they experience and they feel discrimination, they feel and see and witness. And so how do we, for young people, how do we inspire hope to the point that they know it will get better and believe it as well? Because I think we tell them that often, that it's going to get better. But how do they believe it is a whole nother reality. And my belief is the only way for them to believe it is to see young people further empowered, to see young people in their schools before they even get to school. Children like 4, 5, 6 in their regalia, being proud of who they are, practicing who they are. Role models work both ways. It's not just the old people we look up to. It's the young people we look up to too. And those young people are showing us how to be proud. They're showing us how to be loving, showing us how to forgive. And that, I think, is where we should be looking when talking about hope for young people, is look down, look at your younger siblings. Look how much they look up to you. Look how much they love you. Look how much they love their parents. And you'll see that there's a lot of hope. Because if we can continue to love, which is probably the most powerful value we have, then we can never be defeated. Full stop. We've survived probably already the worst circumstances, the complete genocide of an entire continent, and still be here. That's hope. That took prayer, that took courage, and that took a lot of effort and energy by ancestors before us. I don't believe there will be another generation after ours that will suffer the kinds of ways that the generation before us in particular have had to suffer. I think the age of indignity is over. The age of lacking prosperity is over. The age of being told we're second and third, fourth class citizens, it's over in this country. And it's going to be over because we said so.
Physical, racism in sports and beyond. Our bodies hold stories. They carry the bruises, the battles, and the resilience of our ancestors. In the world of sports, where strength and skill should define us, racism still tries to push us out, but we are still here, playing, thriving, and reclaiming space. We explore the impact of racism on physical body, but more importantly, the way we rise, heal, and keep moving forward.
Hey. So my name is Harlan Kingfisher. I'm from Sturgeon Lake First Nation, Saskatchewan. I'm the CEO and founder of the first and deadliest Indigenous hockey clothing brand, Smudge Blades. Smudge Blades started in 2021, and when COVID hit, and I was busy, everything was getting shut down. So I thought a good time to start my clothing brand would be when hockey was, everything was canceled. Everything was canceled. Everyone was looking for something to do. I see on the post on Facebook and all the social media that everybody was missing powwows. Everybody was missing Indigenous hockey tournaments. I thought that'd be a good time to launch my business. And when I launched it, I didn't expect the outcome that I ended up getting from not only in the Indigenous community, but from the non-Indigenous community. And when I started Smudge Blades, it started off as a clothing brand, but there was a deeper meaning to Smudge Blades when I started. It was to showcasing the Indigenous culture within the hockey community. And when I was younger, dealing with racism in hockey it was every day. It was every day. I went to the rink a lot to play hockey. I got dropped off. My grandparents drove me. And when I got to the rink, I was one or maybe two of the only Indigenous kids on the team. And we dealt with it every day on the rink, at the ice, from parents, from hockey, from teammates. And it was very difficult to deal with. But how I dealt with it, I spoke to my mushum, my kukum, I spoke to my dad, and they just reassured me, that I'm not worthless. I'm somebody, and I'm going to be somebody. That's what I just kept playing in my mind every time I went to the rink. I just made it all white noise and didn't even pay attention to any of that. And as I got older through the hockey, I started speaking up. I started to be able to talk and tell people, it's not okay. We still see it in social media, you still see it happening in arenas. And I encourage our youth, I encourage anybody at the rink, if they see racism or they hear racism happening, speak to your coaches, speak to your family, speak to somebody, because that's not okay and it never will be. So right now we're on a path of working hard and to get back, to do good. So, because when I was growing up playing hockey, I dealt with a lot of racism. I dealt with a lot of struggle. I dealt with a lot of trying to do things on my own because I didn't have that hero, that someone to look up to. It was just me, And so creating a clothing brand, that brought Indigenous culture to a platform up here. I was able to showcase, the youth, parents, the aunts, the uncles, that everybody that goes to these hockey games. So the reason why I started Smudge Blades as well is not only to showcase Indigenous culture, but to show the youth that, there's other opportunities and bigger opportunities out there for you, not just in the hockey community, but also whatever you want to do, whatever you want to try, succeed. Like I was never a business. I never knew how to run a business, start a business. But when I did that, you know, the Indigenous business community is so welcoming, and they're amazing, and the people want to support Indigenous. So when I started the clothing brand and I seen people supporting, I had to give back. I was making a lot of money, and so I had to try to give back. I wanted to give back right away. So what I did was I created a scholarship program for Indigenous youth that are playing collegiate hockey. I also give back to Indigenous youth that are wanting to play hockey, like paying for registration fees, hockey equipment. And when I started doing that, I didn't realize by doing that and posting on social media that the outcome, like it would just come full circle. People would want to support me even more. And it was amazing to see, because some of the youth now that I helped 4 years ago, when I started, are playing in the WHL. Some of them are going to university hockey. And I feel like, you know, being part of that initial, you know, me giving back period is just going to carry on for future generations, because they're going to do the same thing. And I think that's amazing right now.
Tanse, Wapoma Squasquare, Tsigason, White Bear Woman is what I'm called. Formerly, I was known as Georgie Lightning. I'm a filmmaker / actor. Moved to Los Angeles from Edmonton in 1990 to pursue a career in the film industry. And now I'm back in Edmonton. My whole life has been about racism. Not consciously, I actually moved to LA to have this incredible experience in story, because it's sacred and I'm just attracted to it. It's my passion. And I ended up getting there and thinking, you know, if I'm just the best I can be, and if I'm an honor student, and if I win these awards and everything. I went to the American Academy. I did the 3 years. I won the award for being the most progressed actor in the school at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And you just think that if you're the very best, you're going to be able to be participate in stories in Hollywood, which was my passion and my dream. But that wasn't the case. When I got into the film industry, the implicit bias was insane. It was heartbreaking. I was never allowed to audition for anything that did not say Indigenous role. Actually, at the time, it was Native American. So unless it said Native American female, I was not even allowed to audition. It didn't matter. My friends would call me and say, Georgie, there's this incredible role, it's so you. And I call my agent and it's like, sorry, it doesn't say Native American. And it would just be like, what? So I really got to audition like twice a year for a Leathers and Feathers thing and Turkey Day Guild. Like those, guest star roles during Thanksgiving, that was it. It was heartbreaking. So my career naturally evolved into being a filmmaker, not on purpose. It was out of necessity. If I ever want to work, I have to create my own work. One of the ways that I've dealt with racism my entire life is just going full force into who I am. I am Indigenous, damn it. I mean, all the stereotypical names. You damn right I'm a savage, I'm Indian. And everything that I do without a consciousness ended up being all about that. So not just being an actor and a filmmaker, but taking the narrative and owning it and changing it and just going, I'm going to make stories that reach the world so that we can bridge gaps and we can heal and we can educate. I really believe that a lot of the hatred comes, it's learned behavior, right? So a lot of it comes from conditioning. The government, our colonizer, everything, it's just like, we're going to conquer, and you have to develop a hatred for that people in order to get other people to get on board. So how do we change that? To eradicate that is we have to change the narrative. So I'm here in Alberta. I want to make Alberta the Indigenous film capital. I'm collecting a whole unity of everybody. I don't care what color you are. We all need to be a participant in this changing and owning the narrative, no matter what race you are. And in doing that, I heal so much. Older Than America, which was about residential school and educated a lot of people. We just signed another 10-year contract. Like, it just keeps getting play. And it's been in all the Ivy League schools. It's educating people all over the place. The power of media. The media is the most powerful tool in the world. So in utilizing the media, we could actually change the world. And I'm not being a schoolgirl when I say that. We can really change the world. We all have to get on board of the power of media, So that's my mission now. I believe that everything that I've lived up till now, I'm 61, has prepared me or built me and got me ready for this next phase of life. which is going to be building a film empire, a media, a sacred storytelling economy here in Alberta. And I get a lot of healing from that. I feel empowered in that. And I'm advocating right now actually on something racist. So I'm a patient at the Cross Cancer Institute. And unfortunately, the oncologist just decided, and I know it's because of race. We all know it's because of race was very, very harsh and toxic. So when you're Indigenous here, on top of dealing with cancer, you have to also decide whether you want to advocate or not. So I decided to advocate. So I kept her as my oncologist, and I ended up reporting her. And now the Cross Cancer Institute, the medical director, is actually going to put educational classes on racism, on culture, on all kinds of stuff like that. So there's change that's going to be made, because if I'm dealing with that, everybody else is dealing with that. And I was told that there's 25% of the patients at the Cross Cancer are Indigenous. So what does that tell you? I mean, it's pretty scary. So, here I am back in Edmonton advocating on racism and trying to build a film economy.
Sansin, Nitsigasun, Melody MacArthur, Miskuchiwaskaigan Utsinira, Treaty 8 Utsinia. My name is Melody MacArthur. I'm from Treaty 8 territory originally. I work in theater, and I'm a singer-songwriter, and I channel all of the things that I go through, specifically with racism, but not just that alone, of course, but I use that to channel what I do into trying to, I guess, change minds and show different ways of being that Native people actually are. So our artistic abilities, our creativity, our depth as human beings, our range of emotion. I want to show that because there is tendency for things to be seen as one way and romanticized from like media and whatnot about the stoic Native person or the Native woman who just doesn't really even have a voice at all. So I use what I do to try and show that there's another way to see Native people. I've seen a lot of systemic racism in terms of how the social systems in this country work to continue perpetuating a cycle, I believe on purpose, because actually a lot of people have this notion and belief that the overrepresentation of our people in certain social systems means that we drain the economy, but that is in fact not true at all. Something I've always wanted to address is that the oppression of our people and overrepresentation of our people in systems like the child welfare system and the incarceration system actually drive the Canadian economy and a lot of government jobs, if you actually think about it. So when I see systemic racism, I'm often looking at it through the lens of things could change if they wanted them to. So why I'm bringing this up is that it is actually up to us as Native people to set an example for other Native people of what we can achieve and what we can do despite all of these barriers and all this racism and all this discrimination and all the intergenerational trauma that we face. We can do anything, and that's kind of what I try to accomplish in my own life through my own story and trying to rise above it as often as I can, though I know it is difficult. But that is why, because I know that the system purposely is working against our people all the time. And then it's perpetuated socially through just other Canadian people, other people who visit this country. And so I'm trying to do what I can for my own part to defy that and challenge those stereotypes, challenge those beliefs, and show something different so that we can just all be equal someday. How I protect myself has been a journey, and it will be a journey for every person who goes through it. But for me, it's really having a strong sense of knowing yourself, of knowing probably, I can't speak for everyone, but knowing your culture and having some ties and connections to your community, which a lot of people I know don't have, but a lot of us are working hard to reconnect with those things. And I think that that's one main important piece of being able to challenge racism when it's towards you, is to know who you really are as a person and be able to stand tall in that. The different ways that I try to find healing in this world are, of course, through art, songwriting, singing, performing, and I also like to work out physically. That really helps. I go for a lot of long nature walks. I get outside and get the fresh air and just kind of feel all of that in my body, get my feet planted on the ground, and I like to go swimming, again, tying it into the physical for you, and I really just trying to give back to other people as often as you can so that you realize that the world is also outside of yourself and not so living in your mind all the time. And you can do that by trying to be of service to other people in any way that you can. I think that all kind of helps overcome those things that can bring you down.
Mental. Unlearning, reclaiming, and empowering. Racism is a battle of the mind. It tries to tell us who we are, where we belong, and what we are worth. But we know the truth. We are powerful, intelligent, and unstoppable. We explore the mental toll of racism and the strength it takes to unlearn the lies, reclaim our identities, and empower ourselves with knowledge. Through these stories, we remind ourselves that our minds are sacred, our stories are valuable, and our wisdom is limitless.
Hello, Tanse, Tammy Ray, Nichigasun, Atikame, Gochinia, Agua, Gift Lake. My roots are also from the Gift Lake Métis settlement, and Miskwichi Uskaigan, Niuigan. So I currently live in Edmonton. Right now, I am a theater actress, singer, songwriter, performer, and educator, and also a graduate study student. So I'm pursuing my master's right now at the University of Alberta, pursuing performing on stage, like pursuing that passion of being a singer and getting to travel. And then also, I get to work within the education system and how to be a leader in your community. So what I do, aside from performing and singing, a curriculum developer, mainly in language revitalization. I create resources in helping people learn Nihiawiwin, but through music. Growing up, there was a lot of racism within education, like even coming to the city schools, like people had no knowledge. They didn't even know, what being Cree was or what a Cree person was. I looked at it as a stereotype, but it was the only thing they had to connect me to something that they would know, and which was Pocahontas. It makes me sad knowing that, there's just like a small portion of history in those textbooks that talk about us, but it's like the historical context. There's nothing when it comes to contemporary context and who we are today and how we're thriving and how we're just, learning our languages, reclaiming that, and there needs to be more of that, and I hope that with the TRC and the education system is that they're gonna work with more people who have that knowledge, who are either from community or have those strong ties to community, because it's important to have that, especially when you're representing, an Indigenous liaison worker within an Edmonton public school system, where there's kids who had no choice but to grow up in the city, but they want to know who they are, but they don't have that space or like that connection within those schools. And we have a lot of kids who are in care too, they don't have a choice but to go to these schools that don't teach Cree and that don't have arts programming for them to express themselves. So there are gaps, but I know that there's amazing people out there that are just working hard to make these changes that focuses on Indigenous education. It's amazing to look at all these amazing Iskwewag, these matriarchs that really paved the way for, students like me to be in this institution and be able to take a Cree class and to be able to take these Native Studies classes, because without these classes, I wouldn't have had that spark in the journey I'm on today, when I'm creating these language revitalization resources, or when I'm singing in Cree, you already being in school, you're breaking cycles and you're breaking barriers. I'm always so proud to see these young ones, these next generation coming into university and being in these institutions and learning and having those opportunities to, learn from Indigenous professors and be part of a community. And that's one thing I would, from just my experience, is just finding your community. If your school has like an Indigenous Peoples Center, go there. You'll probably make connections and you'll probably find a cousin you didn't even know you had. And that will make you feel at home, and you'll find home, especially for those that, you know, had to move away from community and come to the city schools to pursue sports. You'll find people who will support you within those settings, you know, that because they want to see you succeed. I want to see you succeed. Your community wants to see you succeed. Just realize that everybody's so proud of you for waking up every day just to go to school. You know, I'm proud of you.
Well, Tansei, hello, I'm Jessa Sky, but I'm a singer. I sing. If you look me up, Jessa Sky at Jessa Sky or jessasky.com. I don't know my life without music and songs and writing. You know, that was my escape when I was little, was going into my room and wearing heels and singing the Pussycat Dolls when I shouldn't have been. I was too young, but like just escaping from reality. That was kind of like, that's the only place I feel safe is on stage. People think, you know, like I used to be this way when I was like a shy little native girl. I had no voice at all. Wasn't really living in reality. I was just dissociated from everything. And I actually was ashamed to be Native when I was little because I grew up in Sherwood Park. And it's funny enough, it's the first place my mom didn't experience any racism. So that's why we stayed, which like in school, they would always ask me, like in social studies when we were talking about whatever they called us back then. You know, it changes all the time too. We're Aboriginal, we're Indigenous, we're Native, we're Indians, and like lateral violence within our own community, because that's probably what I experienced most of today. But I've definitely, you know, I lived in Leduc for a short period of time, and I was followed in Walmart. You know, I still am sometimes, depending on what I'm wearing. Even in Sephora, I get racism when I try to show them my card to get, because I don't know if any of y'all know this, you don't have to pay tax at Sephora, and they just are so rude. And I don't, like, I kind of just, I stay delusional in my mind frame with stuff like that, because there was a period of time where I let everyone have the power of me, and I was in addiction and like so not good for like 8 years. So now I kind of reframe it like, you know, that has nothing to do with me. They're projecting onto me. But I've been followed in Walmart. You know, as a kid, people just call me mean names. And I think the thing with racism, and I'm sure anyone watching this can understand, is they don't even need to say anything. It's the feeling and it's the looks. And I can definitely tell, especially as a woman, I can tell when someone's looking at me and what the motive is. Either I have to protect myself, which I wasn't good at doing for years. So I couldn't say no, I had no boundaries. I would end up in really, really bad situations. But there's a feeling, a look someone gives you where they're above you. Until I got sober and I went to my first treatment center in 2018, I went to Poundmakers. That's where I kind of started really, like, that's where I did my first sweat, you know, and it was just like, whoa, like I just got goosebumps. The stuff that happened in there was like magical, where it showed me like, you know, I should be proud of this. And I still gaslight myself sometimes. It's a lot better now that I have like sobriety and found out who I was, but it is true. Like, you know, I had this imposter syndrome of a lot of the gigs that I do that are for our people. I get scared, but that's my own self-doubt and my own belief. It's not because people are being a certain way. And if I have these false core beliefs about myself, which is from racism and intergenerational trauma and colonization, like again, why I don't know my own language, it's not my fault. I didn't have the opportunity, but I'm learning and I'm transparent online. And I think if anything anyone can take away anything from this, is that as long as you stay true to you, even if you don't know who that is, like no one can take that from you. And when you're authentic, people will feel it. And the right people will love you exactly how you're supposed to be. And the people that are not for you should not be in your life. And so with racism, what I had to learn was I have to find out who I am, and I can no longer be a victim, because I lived victim for 8 years. And I looked around one day and there was no one else to blame but me. And that was because of the hurt and the trauma and the abuse as a kid and the bullying and the sexual violence and all, and I let it consume me, and I wasn't even aware I was a victim. I thought I wasn't, but looking back, I was very much a victim. So I had to take accountability for my side of the street, and I had to get well. Well, I don't let racism stop me, and I think a lot of like my behaviors that don't serve me are from fear. It's fear-based. So for many, many years of my life, I allowed people's opinions and what they said of me and where they, it was kind of this weird cognitive dissonance where I didn't really feel like I belonged anywhere because my mom is Cree, my dad is a little bit Mohawk and white. So it was like, I'm a half-breed. That was something rude people would say, and it was like, I'm not accepted here, and now I'm not accepted here. So like, where do I fit in? And I think that's why like not knowing who you are is so important, whoever that is, and it's a daily thing. Even if someone, called me a half-breed or they would say those things, I was like, haha, like, and I would just co-sign to that, which is so awful, the ultimate like disrespect to yourself. Like I didn't sing publicly till rehab when I was there in 2018. I was terrified, even though I did it as a kid. I was too scared of people's opinions, and so I'm not trying to claim, with the lateral violence, I'm not trying to claim like my nativeness to people and try to get approved by them. Like I am me, and I show my culture in different ways, and like I don't need to explain that to anybody. I think the beautiful thing about being Indigenous and like our teachings is to show it through action. I combat racism, quite honest, by proving them wrong. And like that stuff makes me motivated now, today. When I see someone giving me a look or they think I can't do something and then I do it, sorry. Like, it's like we're a force to be reckoned with.
Spiritual, the strength of ancestors, the fire within. Our spirits are unbreakable. No matter how racism tries to erase us, we remain. We are the songs of our grandmothers, the prayers of our grandfathers, the fire that refuses to go out. We connect to the spiritual side of healing, the ways we find strength in ceremony, land, and each other. This is a reminder that we are guided, protected, and deeply rooted in something greater than oppression. Our spirits will always rise.
Hi, my name is Evening Star Woman. I am from Big Stone Cree Nation. I'm also known as Kimberly Yellowknee, and I'm the owner of Kim's Creations. Kim's Creations, I had started this 2 years ago. I don't know if it was in a dream or what, but I just heard you gotta feed the people. That's where I didn't realize until later that it's the love that you put into it, because everything's energy. Everything around you is energy, and the love you give off, it goes into your food. And this is where I was like, I meant to heal people through my food. This is spirit cooking through me. So spirit cooks through me, and I'm there helping and putting in my love in that inspiration. And it just, when I'm in that trance of cooking, it feels really good. From a young girl, I experienced racism just from my own people, just in my own community, because I was very light-skinned compared to so many of them. And so I didn't fit in. I got bullied a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was really quiet. I was timid. I never spoke up about it. I tried to, but it just got pushed aside like nothing happened. And then I was bullied by the white people. And I was a mean person, like, to these kids that were trying to bully me. Because that's when I started having a voice. I started speaking up for myself, and I was like, I'm not gonna allow this to happen anymore. So I'd stick up for myself. So I was considered a mean kid, the mean girl, I guess you could say. But this was just for me sticking up for myself. And then some people actually started warming up to me because they saw that I was actually a genuinely nice person. With my catering, I gone to farmers markets, and I've had people walk past me and they would roll their eyes, and I see the disgust in people's face, especially the Moniawak. I would see them look at me, they roll their eyes, and some people would come and be like, oh, I can make bannock. I'm like, oh, good, right on, that's good for you, that's awesome. How I think of it now, I would look at them, and at first I was so discouraged, I'd hurt, and it was just like, I was like, no, and I'd ground myself and be like, no, don't let them get the best of you. You're just hurting yourself. And this is how I would talk to myself. I'm just hurting myself, and that's not okay. Let it go. Let them. That's when I started using this let them theory. And before this book even came out, I started using this let them theory. Because you know what? People are harsh. People are mean. And you can let them get the best of you, and it's up to you to say, no, I'm not going to allow that. It's like, go ahead, say what you got to say, but don't let it affect you, because what you think of yourself matters. You know, it goes a long way. And gain that confidence, gain that self-love, because you deserve it. You're amazing. You know, I'm just thankful for the growing and being able to see this, because like people are bitter, and because they don't have the knowledge of our people. They don't realize how amazing our culture is, how much love there is, and how pure. And if so many nations can see our culture, and if everyone can see how the beauty in it, you know, our world would change.
Nasigasun Carter. My full name is Carter, but my spirit names are Kehio Awasis and Pasquamustus Kiaki Sik, which translates to Eagle Child and Buffalo Child who's kind. A time I faced racism is at school. My school asked me to put a performance on for their Indigenous Day, and I had my whole outfit on, but like there was students that liked it, but then there were students that were calling me names and stuff. And with my hair growing out too, I get called a girl, and it's just randomly in the hallways. I kind of watch what I do. Like I kind of tend to stay away from people at school, especially those people that say those things to me, because it kind of hurts and it's like negative, and I'm trying to keep that positive in my life. It hurts a lot. Like I happened for a week straight, and I like had thoughts about cutting it, but I told myself that wasn't our way. Yeah, it instills a lot of pride, especially with my hair, because I didn't grow up with long hair. My hair was always cut. But as soon as I started doing ceremony, that's when I made that commitment to grow out my hair and to keep growing out my hair. And that means a lot of pride to me, because it shows that I'm not afraid and I'm brave to keep it long. It means a lot, because especially what happened to our people. Because my family, they don't grow out their hair, and I kind of was the one to step out to do it because of our history. And it makes me happy, because then I can see and I can show that teaching to my children. Partaking in my culture makes me feel amazing, because when I was younger, I wasn't into culture, and I just started about a year ago, and I've done so much already. I've learned how to dance, I've gone to ceremony, I've gotten a name. Even if I'm down, I'll just go smudge and dance. I dance traditional, so I know those moves. I don't really know anything else. I just started dancing like in September. The one thing I love to do a lot is actually dance. It means a lot to me too, because my family, again, they don't do culture. They aren't into culture, and that means a lot to me, because growing up, I never had this stuff. And being able to do it during a camp is amazing. I feel like connected in a way. So that's part of my reconnecting journey. And it makes me happy, because I've learned in the span of like 10, not even 10 months. And my first powwow I danced was Enoch's traditional powwow in April. And it was the day of my birthday. And that made me like extra happy too. It's hard being Native, especially in today's day and age. Especially because like you have to know people to be able to go to ceremony. And it's hard to get that connection, but you have to find those right people. Like I found CHS, that's how I got into ceremony, because of Ambrose.
Tanse ni pakoi simuin papimonti nitzigasun ochekia otinia miskachiwaskaigan Ekoa Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. My name is Ambrose Cardinal. My spirit name is One Who Walks at the Sundance. I'm Métis and Cree. For me, I run a program called Indigenous Boys Matter 2. Like, because I'm very light, like white passing, I kind of like experience racism in the weirdest ways. In ways where it's like, if I was around white people, they'd say racist things or do racist things with not knowing I was necessarily Indigenous, unless they saw my family or unless they knew who I was, you know? So for me, like, it was always this, like, walking in between these two worlds. You know, I saw the ways in which my family members are being treated, you know, like my mom's side of the family is a lot darker than me, you know, and I just remember hearing like all these stories about things that they went through, you know, like even for myself, like the more I became more in touch with who I am, and the more I like started doing ceremony and celebrating my culture, the more even family members started treating me differently. Like back in like 2016 when I started becoming an Escapios and taking that role on, I was really excited to tell my family, like, I'm learning the culture, I'm going to ceremony. And it was an extended family member, and I didn't know that they were very Christian. She took me aside and was like, don't ever mention that in this house, you know, like, that's devil worship, you know. And like for me as a young man, like 19 years old, I was proud of the work that I was doing, because for me I was like, okay, like I'm trying to break a cycle. You know, I see how addiction and substance abuse has affected my own life. I see how it affected my father. So for me, I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm gonna connect to ceremony, do ceremony, and, you know, learn how to Sundance and do these things, because I know it's what's important. I know it's gonna open up, you know, areas of healing for myself and my family. But then for them to just be like don't go there, like you know, like come to church with me, just like super, it was the total opposite reaction I was hoping, you know. And it caused a lot of rift in my family. Being around other Métis people, there's always that divide between Catholicism and between following a ceremonial way. But for me, like understanding the history, understanding the explicit racism that was caused through colonialism and through pushing the church into our territories, you know, I see the ways it affected us, because I try to better myself, and I know that by bettering myself, it means connecting to the Creator, to learning and reclaiming our ceremonies, and, you know, learning our language. You know, if we were hurt by someone, or if we faced racism, you know, we have to start dealing with it in a good way. You know, so many of our own community members, so many people don't want to talk. You know, they just want to isolate us or exile us, you know, and that is colonialism. You know, that is a direct impact of things that our relatives face, our ancestors, parents, grandparents, and we just carry that with us. Part of my healing journey was being able to try to let it go, to talk about it openly, you know. And the way that's helped me is by, you know, connecting with the youth, taking the knowledge that I've learned and trying to apply it into their lives. You know, we have so many great teachings, we have so much knowledge, we have so many things that just keep coming to us once we open up those doors. But it really starts with self-love, and then supporting ourselves, reaching out, you know, connecting to ceremony, taking care of our whole self, you know, exercising, eating good, being on the land, you know, and just speaking up. So that's really what our program's about, you know, is trying to create a space where we can do that all together.
My name is Kalen Bird. I'm from Samson, the area we're in now. This one time when I was little, 4 or 5, I was trying to open a door for an elderly woman, and she did not take kindly to it. She was really rude. When I tried to open the door for her, she kind of just got my hand off the door, grabbed the door, and like looked at me directly and went to close it. She gave me an expression of like a really mean expression. Like she did not like me. I know that for sure. I was about 4 or 5 about the time. It felt hurtful. It felt like I was not the same to her, or not even a person to her. When I just want to get something off my mind, I usually just go to ceremony. It helps a lot, like pipe ceremony. Yeah. I feel comfort every time I go to one, and I feel like I'm not being judged, or knowing that I'm just welcomed, and everyone here is to do better, and for me to do better. In my hand is my Muslim's pipe. It's used for ceremonies, and I am particular Escapios for him. I help the Muslim whenever he needs to be his right-hand man or left-hand man. It makes me feel safe, and it helps a lot when times are tough all the time. That makes me feel like everyone here is here for the same purpose. With racism, how I deal with it is just relaying back to it and just hoping that it doesn't happen again. I don't know, I pray for myself, basically. I pray for that. I don't want that to happen again, and so I go into ceremonies.
My name is Joe Swampy Nitsikasun. I'm a knowledge keeper with Creating Hope Society. So I do a lot of the work in all of the different workshops and sessions and groups they have here. I probably applied at every single law firm in the city about 3 times. I got a few calls back, but then, when I walked in that door, I felt like it was a different story. I remember I cried a lot. I was like, okay, they tell you to go get a job, they tell you to go to school, they tell you to do this, and then when you do it, you're not good enough. I was devastated anyways that I couldn't get a job, and I didn't want to be on welfare. So I started looking at other things that I could do. I didn't even bother trying to go into the white community, the Western world. I actually got a listing of all the First Nations businesses in the city, as well as the First Nations band offices, and I called their workforce development and let them know what kind of things I do. As I got out there more and more, people put my name out there and they're like, call Joe. And the thing that helps me keep going, is to keep doing. Keep going. Find culture, find ceremony, talk to your people who are in your group. As a knowledge keeper, these are actually this is my gift. I love being out on the land. The land is my place. If I'm not at work, I'm on the land. So far I've have here 53 different medicines. But these are a lot of roots and berries and just plants, and so the way these bring me healing is usually if somebody else needs the medicines, I am able to tell them. So if they've got a headache, then I have willow over there. If they have a cold or they're trying to even quit smoking, there's mullein. Our people are so interested in the medicines. A lot more people are coming out, and I was told to learn about all the medicines in the different cultures so that I can have that. For me, it gives me such healing, because when you're out on the land, it's so high vibrational. You heal as you're walking and you're picking, you bend over to pick. The animals come too. I've had many animal encounters and I was scared, but you offer just like the plants and the roots and berries, you offer tobacco and tell them why you're coming and that you're not there to hurt them, and you'll be fine.
Newcomers, finding home in a land of barriers. This land holds many stories of the first people and of those still arriving, seeking safety, opportunity, and home. But for many newcomers, the dream of a better life is met with barriers, racism, exclusion, and the struggle to belong. We listen to those who have walked this path, who have faced discrimination, yet found the strength in their journey. Their stories remind us that healing is not just about one community, it's about all of us, standing together, creating a future where no one is treated as an outsider.
My name is Josephine Pallard, and I am an immigrant from the Philippines. I came way back in 1967, when you were not even born. Many of the teachers that came in and nurses and doctors were really from the Philippines at that time. That's how we started our way of coming into Canada. So here, when I came to Canada, I really had to go back to the university because my certificate was not really accepted by Alberta Education. That's already what you would call racism. But still, when I came to Canada, they said, no, that's not enough. So they had to send me back to university to do another 2 years. And that time, it was very difficult because I did not have money. And I was alone when I came to Canada. No friends, no relatives. Oh my gosh, I said, what am I going to do? So while waiting for someone to help me, get out of the airport, I was already crying. So then I started walking on Jasper Avenue, and then I saw the cathedral, the St. Joseph's Basilica. I went there, and of course, lucky enough, there were also Filipinos that came on their own. So we said, what are we going to do? And so they said, well, why don't we group together so that we will not be staying in hotels and maybe find a place to stay. That's how we started. And then I went to the university to really start my degree. But we survived because my first job was to teach at La Claviche. And the students, when they saw me, they said, teacher, you are like me. So I enjoyed my 3 years, having my indigenous students and me being indigenous myself. Now, being also an immigrant, I said, we have new people coming from different countries. Why don't we help them? So we say, well, why don't we start a group? So we started this organization called Changing Together, a Center for Immigrant Women. That's how it started. And so now we have a lot of women that are really coming from different parts of the world that really say, thank you, this is a place where we find it very much accepting. At the same time, they become friends, forever friends. How did I experience racism? Even to this very day, when I am on the bus, hey, you chink, go back to your country. And I say, I'm not a chink, I'm a flip. Flip is a derogatory word for Filipinos. I said, I'm not taking your job. I'm a teacher. What's your job? Okay. And the bus driver will say, hey, come on, get out. But once in a while, you still have that. Okay. The ignorance of the people, we have to educate. And as you said, it's in a positive way. Because we cannot really fight back and say, who are you to say that to me? No. We have to let them know that we are as equal as they are. Positivity there is your community will feel better if they know that what's racism? What are you talking about? Okay, we're here as equal as you are. Maybe the color is different. Maybe our language is different. But then our mentality, there's equity. The way we treat other people, there has to be equity. No way of saying you're better than we are.
Hi everyone, my name is Nifemi, and I work as an anti-racism coordinator at AIWCC. The path that led me to that point would actually be first immigrating to Canada. Before getting here, I hadn't really experienced any kind of racism because in Nigeria, everyone is Black. So to come here, I had to come to terms with that. And with that comes some of the bullying, the teasing, that really made it very difficult. One of the things that I didn't know was weird until I got here was one of my home foods, my cultural foods. And when I first got here, my parents would send me to school with all the cultural foods, and the kids would bully me so much about it that I ended up not eating at school. And I would come home, and my mom would be upset because it was wasting money that we didn't have a lot of when we first got here. And it came off as ungrateful, but it was my way of dealing with the bullying. So I would get punished at home and punished at school because of that experience. I started learning how to just throw my food in the garbage whenever I got home, so my parents wouldn't get as upset with me. But those kinds of experiences aren't things that are translated for you when you first get to the country. You understand racism as an abstract concept, but how it can show up at school, at work, in the medical office, any kind of institution is not easily accessible, especially when you're an immigrant. So my job at AIWCC is to make that information accessible, as well as the coping skills accessible. So the way that I coped with experiencing a lot of that when I was younger, and that was more the PG stuff, I guess, was to create a lot of workshops and information that targeted immigrants in newcomers and tell them this is how racism can show up in school. This is how it can affect your child. This is what you can do. These are your resources that are available. So that's one way that I cope with it. And it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of the times we do activities in addition to learning about racism. We do crochet and chat. So we'll talk about culture and we'll talk about everything while doing like a little crochet, having a high tea with everyone and having those kinds of discussions. My focus tends to be on creating community spaces because that's when people really listen to each other, hear from each other, and work towards a better future. When we're all able to have conversations across the aisle and share food and share knowledge, I find that those are the strongest ways to cope with racism and the strongest anti-racism workshop. Nothing is going to be stronger than you meeting someone who you expect to be different than you and they're more similar to you than you are different. So my focus is on creating spaces like that as well as still providing that information. It's kind of the same advice that I give to a lot of people who come to my workshops, is to still maintain that connection with your culture. Still bring your food. It's delicious. Why should you have to change? It's other people, maybe even bring extra for the kids in your class and say try it. If they don't like it, if they don't like it, that's besides the point. It's you're inviting someone to share in a cultural experience with you. And then point out how what they're doing is not cool, is kind of bullying. Ask them why they're doing that. And is it really all that funny? And the third one, no one likes this one, you could tell your teachers and have them support you in some kind of way. That could help you move forward. But one thing that I wouldn't suggest, which is what I did when I was younger, was internalizing that and just making yourself feel really awful for the way you are naturally, then trying to force yourself to assimilate to mainstream culture. No, you're eventually going to find your way back to your culture and your roots and the things that make you happy. It's better not to do the whole 10-year fight that I did with myself and just embrace that as much as you can, because not only will your older self be thankful, but maybe your family, your friends, any children, if you choose to have some, will be thankful too to be able to share in that culture with you because you haven't separated from it.
Hi, my name's Abby and I'm one of the co-founders of Step Up Anti-Racist Association. We basically help youth combat racism in their everyday lives. Reasoning of even starting Step Up as a whole kind of stems from my own personal lived experiences with racism. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Jamaica. I moved here when I was 13, and I was someone who had a very strong accent, looks different. I went to an all-white school, so I was very much different in every category compared to my classmates. And a lot of the times it made me afraid to speak because every time I opened my mouth, it came with that's not how you say that, you're pronouncing that wrong, things like that. And honestly, I approached it so wrong when I first moved here. What I did to combat it was to try and fit in as much as possible. Hence why I sound like this today. I would go home and I'd practice how to talk white. I'd watch YouTube videos about how to talk white, and I regret that so much right now because this is how I sound. When I go and talk to my family members back home, I sound whitewashed. I sound Canadian, which is one of my biggest regrets. When I was moving here, I would straighten my hair every single day to the point it was breaking off, which again is not healthy. But that's kind of why we started Step Up, because when I was in school, I didn't really have any tools or was equipped with anything really to stand up against racism. I thought the best way was to relinquish all that I knew, stop bringing my cultural food to school, things like that, and I would finally fit in. But then I realized after doing all of that, I still didn't fit in. I still wasn't a white, blonde-haired woman, no matter how much I tried. So that's kind of what we did with Step Up, of wanting people to feel confident in the things that make them who they are and to be able to accurately address situations in their lives. Because for me when I was younger, I thought racism was, racial slurs, beating someone up, such overt ways. I had no idea what microaggressions even were. And I think in a Canadian context, that's kind of where a majority of our racism lies, in that microaggression realm. So that's been a huge thing of helping youth understand what microaggressions are. And it's valid for you to feel hurt by these. It's valid for you to feel, invalidated. And we also culture is such a huge thing for what we do. And we want people to be proud of their culture, and we just kind of enforce multiculturalism as a way of being proud of each other's cultures and building together this strong community that is diverse and that we're all appreciating everyone for everything they can bring to the table. So something that I call her Nana. My Nana always says is that every miku meka muckle, which basically means every little thing adds up to something big in the end. And that's kind of the idea I talk about when we're dealing with micro affirmations, when we're talking with youth, of that small act of kindness. To you, it may mean something really small, of just like, hey, that looks really good today. Or you see someone wearing their cultural clothing, being like, oh, that looks so cute. Again, maybe something really small to you, but that mickle will be a muckle to someone else. It'll be something big that can truly be the reason they feel comfortable now wearing that outfit, bringing that food to school, things like that. So macro affirmations, where I first, because my other job is that I'm an anti-racism facilitator for another nonprofit, and I was kind of doing some research in terms of making this anti-racism presentation to give to schools where, you know, they're dealing with racism a lot. And NERQuest actually has a good toolkit out there where that's the first time I heard the word. They didn't really go too in depth in it, but like that's where I first saw the keyword, and then I went further in my research, and there are even different aspects within macro affirmations going to a deeper level. So for every microaggression there is a macro affirmation to counteract it, and we just need to really hone in on understanding what those macro affirmations are and stop trying to tell ourselves like, oh, it's probably not that big of a deal, it's probably not that deep, when to the other person it probably could make their whole day, their whole week. 100%, I wish I had those macro affirmations as a kid, because honestly what made me kind of stop straightening my hair was someone being like, oh, your natural hair is really pretty, and I've never heard that before. So that's when I was like, wait, it is? Like I saw it as something I have to continuously hide, you know? I hated when we went swimming because that means I'd have to go into the water and my hair would get wet, which means like the curly hair would be out. Those macro affirmations could just be what people need to like fully switch the way they see themselves and kind of counter the internalized racism they're dealing with. Something I'd say is that we like to think that, you know, relinquishing everything will make us fit in better, but it truly does not. And like studies literally show that having a stronger sense of self, stronger sense of community and identity and culture, that's what makes it better, and that's what makes you more equipped to stand up against, you know, racism, discrimination, because you're more confident in what you are and who you are. When you relinquish all of that, you realize you can't fit into the Eurocentric lens, because no matter how hard we try, we won't fully fit in. But then if you're relinquishing the part that actually fully accepts you, that leaves you in this middle ground of kind of not knowing who you are. So I really, really urge everyone to like hold on to their sense of culture, hold on to their sense of self, because that's where your community is. You know, that's really what equips you, makes you feel confident enough to go out into this world and, you know, stand up against these issues that you're going to be facing every day. Because unfortunately, it's hard to say, but we face this all the time. I love to say that you're gonna live a life where you'll never come across racism or discrimination, but it's out there, unfortunately. But you know, our culture and our sense of self is really an incredible tool to counter these things.
Creating a society stands with us, lifting voices, building trust. Together we rise, our hearts complete. So hear the drum, feel the beat. The circle turns, the healing grows. Through us all, the spirit flows. They try to break us, try to bend, took our voices to the wind, but the spirit's got us still. Through the mountains, through the hills, we rise up singing strong and free. Creating hope society walks with me. Creating hope society stands as one. We walk as fire. Creating hope society lifts us higher. Heart unshaken, voice so loud. We wear our colors, we stand proud. No more silence, no more shame. We rise together, call our names. Every step upon this land is a story carved in sand. They drew lines to hold us down, but our roots grow underground. These hands are strong, this heart won't break. Creating hope